quick one because I want to tune into a friend's stream in a little while. But what we got here is a Sharp VCR that is kind of faulty, and to demonstrate that, we're going to hook it up. So how I'm going to hook it up is by using this adapter here. Now this is a great adapter if you need something in a pinch, like to hook up an old VCR to a modern TV. But for playing N64, it's not so great because it's an upscaler. It only lets you switch between 720p and 1080p. Whereas the device that I have for my N64 lets you switch between widescreen and 4:3. So this is way more useful because realistically, you almost always want to play N64 games in 4:3 aspect ratio. Otherwise, you're going to be stretching the image horizontally. This device will stretch the image, and it doesn't give you any way of unstretching it unless your TV has a built-in feature to, scrunch it back up. This, on the other hand, will output the correct aspect ratio depending on what mode you put the switch into. And sometimes you do want to put it in widescreen mode because some N64 games actually do have a somewhat official support for widescreen aspect ratio. Typically, you have to finagle it a little bit. Like, you got to go into the settings for that game and specify widescreen. This applies to Perfect Dark and GoldenEye, as well as, I believe, Banjo-Kazooie 2. Now, as for VCRs, the reason I don't like using this adapter normally, and why it's not part of my workflow anymore, except for repair, I'd say this is great for my repair workflow because I can quickly hook it up, do my testing, and then unhook it. The reason I don't like this normally, however, is because when I'm digitizing VHS tape, even if the video is 4:3 aspect ratio, it's going to stretch the image. And so that would be the equivalent of having a square picture like this one here and having it come up like that. That's literally what it does to the image. And then I have to manually figure out a way to shrink it depending on what software I'm using. And I just don't like having to do that. So I would, prefer that it leaves the signal alone. And so there's other adapters out there. Also, another thing was a lot of adapters like to do upscaling, including this one. So even if this one gave me the correct aspect ratio, not only is it upscaling the image, but it is also de-interlacing the image. And that is a big no-no because I don't want some device doing my de-interlacing for me. I have my own method. So, for example, what is de-interlacing? Well, if I turn off de-interlacing in VLC Media Player, these horizontal lines that you can barely see are called combing artifacts. And anytime something is moving quickly, or if you pause it like I just did now, you'll see these horizontal lines on, interlaced or VHS footage that is interlaced in this case. A lot of DVDs also are interlaced. And so on an old TV, you wouldn't see this, but on any digital display, you do see this. If you have an automatic de-interlacer, it sometimes does a great job. Sometimes, however, depending on what de-interlacing mode you are using, some of these modes, like discard, can effectively cut your resolution in half. And so this is not desirable. I was able to process this and get it de-interlaced really nicely. And I believe I have the output file somewhere over here. Here we are. Perfect. And I did this yesterday during a stream. But if we go to part 1, we want part 1. That's part 5. So this is the video you just saw. And no de-interlacing enabled in VLC, but the image is much smoother. And I did a video yesterday where, I went into a little bit more length, but bottom line is we don't see those horizontal lines when we pause it. The only issue is this rainbow color here on the side. I think that was in both versions, but that's something else I would have to address separately if I choose to address it. Also, now we're getting 60 frames a second instead of 30 frames a second. Although, I do get some weird issues with the playback depending on what codec. That's why I did it like 10 separate times in different codecs. Like part 1, I did it multiple times, and I did each other part twice in different codecs just to kind of explore what worked better. But now let's put a tape into this VCR and see what happens. So to do that, we got to hook up the VCR. Okay, so we have our HDMI adapter. We also have our HDMI cable. So now that we have the HDMI adapter and HDMI cable, we're going to plug these things in together. Doesn't really matter if I do 720p or 1080p on there, but I think it's currently set to 1080p. And then we're going to hopefully switch to my Elgato. Do we have power? Yes, we have power to the VCR. So let's see. Okay, well that says no signal. Is that the correct thing here? And just to verify. So either this device is refusing to give any signal, or I'm using a bad cable. It's quite possible that I need to switch to a USB HDMI adapter, because I found that sometimes the Elgato could be really picky about that, but this should work. So bottom line, this VCR has an issue with the tape heads, although this particular Elgato is refusing to take the signal. Oh, you know what I forgot? Oh, that sucks. That sucks. This device, like many others of its kind, require a supplemental power source. That is superbly annoying, because I did not anticipate that I would need to go looking for a USB power supply to do this kind of testing. So I may be asked out, because I'm about to tune into my friend's live stream right now. So I'm gonna record this, and I would invite people to tune in later when I play back the recording of the progress made here just now. So yeah, gonna end that early.